This is what I like to call my morning after washing hairdo on top of my head. So you're all going to have to deal with it looking rather, shall we say, like a mad scientist look. Now I absolutely must get a cup of coffee this morning, and then we're going to get right into talking about what do I mean by that thumbnail title. We'll have a look, but first, coffee. I have my coffee. Let's go. Oh, and a quick caveat. Because I've been mentioning my Nespresso pods quite a bit recently, I wanted to just add, for anybody that doesn't know, the pods are made from aluminium, not plastic, and they are recyclable, and they have a recycled pod back scheme now. Most of the pod companies, but Nespresso and L'Or are particularly good, and they even create their own bags for you to send them back directly to them to ensure that they are recycled. So for some people that have perhaps faster paced lifestyles, I can understand why an espresso machine is useful as a convenience, and I think other people that don't live that type of lifestyle, that are like always living from home, working from home, and have all the time in the world, need to remember that there may be some reasons why other people can't do that, okay? Unless they got up at 4 AM in the morning to start making fresh coffee. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to enjoy my recycled pod Nespresso coffee. But we're going to talk about a few things. Now, we're not going to really talk about veganism here on this video. What we're going to talk about is freeganism and living a freegan lifestyle. Now, am I in the shadow there? Now, for quite a few years now, it has obviously been a very topical discussion, that a very good reason for veganism, obviously aside from animal welfare, is also for the environment, and that's mainly what we're going to focus on in this video. That it's better for the environment, providing obviously things are sustainably sourced, if people are vegan. That I can totally get on board with. Now, however, what people are actually saying, and I've seen a few growing discussions about it, is actually that the most sustainable and frugal lifestyle, at the end of the day, that is what we are discussing in these 31 days, is actually a freegan lifestyle. Now, what do I mean by this? So, a freegan lifestyle is loosely categorised as somebody that attempts to live by means of not really buying, purchasing and consuming when there is so much waste going on. Now, you could almost say, my arm is really in the bright sun there, you could almost say that it's distracting. Let me try and move. You're going to have to deal with the sun on my arm, guys. So you could almost say that it is perhaps an extreme version of minimalism and underconsumption core, in that it's not just consuming at a normal amount, it's not just watching what you consume, it is mostly dumpster diving and getting things for free. Because the amount of food waste, perhaps in all Western culture, but it's definitely relevant here in the UK, is unreal. You only have to be at a supermarket around closing time, if you've ever gone that late, to see the food that by law they have to, throw away at the end of that day, is still in perfectly good condition. Now, I have a friend that regularly does this. He visits the skips and the dumpsters at the end of the day and fishes through the stuff, and I actually only wish I had the wherewithal to actually be able to climb and get in the skip. Now, I'm not sure if the supermarkets around us are actually locked on an evening, but it is actually something that I have considered doing, because it just seems ludicrous on so many levels that there is all this waste, and yet there is so much starvation in the world, and yet we're paying also, from a frugal point of view, so much money for our food, but if we just went at the end of each day, we could be given it for free. It just seems mad that why not at least bring it out perhaps on a table at the end of the day and invite people to come and take it rather than throwing it in the bin. It should be a crime. Now, I once thought that it was only food that this happened with, but it can happen at the back of all kinds of different outlets and shops. Things are getting thrown in the bin because they've got slight imperfections. It even happens in our own homes. Now, this is one area that I do it. If I see something in the skip and it is an absolute crime to be throwing it away, regardless of whether I am a minimalist or not, if I see that that could be of some worth to somebody, especially in this area, because the buildings are so old, often the things getting thrown out of them are sort of retro and antique. The other day, from a bin near us, or a large skip, I rescued these two hand-carved throne-style chairs that could have easily been worth £100 each. And I just couldn't actually believe it, that somebody would rather throw it away than go to a little bit of extra effort to say, advertise it and say, even collect free. It just seemed awful that could go to somebody, or even dropping it off in a charity shop if you didn't want to wait somebody, if you didn't want to wait in for somebody to come and collect it. Anyway, I did rescue them and I did give them to my mum, who actually now wants some furniture. So I always try to rescue things for a while and see if anybody wants them, even if I don't, because I think it's a crying shame that then at a later date somebody might go buy these things new, adding to the consumer recycle, when there were two perfectly good chairs there in a skip. So I feel like it's my way of even helping the recycle and the consumption of things. But let's also talk about ways that it is possible to be a freegan without actually dumpster diving. Now, what I actually do is, I do know in my area one thing that the supermarkets do try to do, which is at the end of the day, when they know the food is going to go out of date legally, but not use by perhaps, they will put yellow stickers on them and try to reduce them right down. And I will usually go take advantage of that, because I know that often it's half or even quarter of the price, and that's how I can afford to have such a frugal food budget, as perhaps you got an idea of yesterday, because the things have been really reduced. But my little problem that I've got with that is that it's not quite enough sometimes to have been able to sell it by the end of the day. They're not quite prepared to reduce it enough, rather than it go in the bin. I mean, why not in the last hour have it at like 20 pence each, so it definitely sells? Because most of the people, I think, would definitely buy it if it was 20 pence. So perhaps they could improve a little bit there. But if they don't, and it does go in the bin, and there are freegans out there, let's discuss whether we think it is actually more sustainable than a vegan diet. And we're not really speaking comparatively here. There are many benefits to being vegan. What I am here to say is, arguably, it's even cutting down waste more, because even as a vegan, perhaps buying organically produced soy, seeds, things like that, the protein intake, it's still consuming, it's still production. Whereas if there's actually waste out there, I can understand the benefit to just eating anything rather than it be wasteful. For instance, I actually know of people that would consider themselves at least to be vegetarian, but they would rather, if they saw some, say, milk or cheese going out of date, they would rather eat it rather than throw it in the bin. Otherwise, all that process, and you know what I'm talking about, has been for nothing. If it's gonna end up in the bin, why not eat it rather than nothing? Now, this is really extreme what I'm gonna say, but there are places in the world where when an animal has sadly perhaps been run over by accident, people will take it and eat it. Now, I'm not actually talking about people who are severely starving and they have no choice other than starve. I'm talking about they would rather simply eat that animal rather than see it waste if it has already been killed by accident. So, although that's an extreme way of how I'm trying to explain what I mean, do you see what I'm getting at to do with the freegan dumpster diving? Some people, for instance, would class themselves as vegan, but if they found a leg of pork in the bin that was, you know, wrapped up so it was hygienic and they could wash it, they would rather eat it than leave that sort of carcass rotting there in the bin to be wasted and that animal's life to have been taken in vain. Now, I can see all arguments for and against this, and I can even understand people who are devout vegans physically not being able to do it. Like, I know that for some people who have been vegan for perhaps 20 years, when they go to actually even think or consider about eating flesh, obviously this goes for vegetarians as well, it physically makes them sick and they are unable. But what I think I am talking about from a general point of view is how it must be much more frugal and much more sustainable to just never waste anything and to always make use of everything so that there isn't all this wastage. I shared a couple of videos, the facts that in the UK about £200 worth of food per week goes into most people's bin in the UK. So all that food is getting wasted in the home, but then it's also getting wasted in the supermarket. Now let's go back to something else that is actually, from a frugal standpoint, I would absolutely love to do this. My friend that I mentioned earlier goes dumpster diving, and you know who you are if you're watching, and just gets absolutely hundreds of pounds worth of food for himself for the week. And usually if you do, you can put it in a cooler or a fridge. It often does still have about 7 days on it from the point that it is thrown out. And he lives quite well from completely free food. And I suppose the key thing is, who the hell is shouting outside? I suppose the key thing is not really minding what you eat and being able to eat anything. But also, I think there are ways that you could still be a bit choosy and be a freegan and a vegan. You'd obviously just leave the meat, dairy produce behind for other people and perhaps just take some of the other things that you could eat from the dumpster if you really wanted to do that. Because as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I still, even as a reasonably frugal, prudent minimalist, spend around, I think, about £50 a week on food and drink for me personally. That seems like not that much. I think it is quite frugal, and I said obviously my health will always be the first priority, but imagine if I didn't even spend that because I went dumpster diving instead. Now, more and more what I am doing is not quite the extreme of dumpster diving, and it is simply visiting the shops, and I know there are set days in this area where it's reduced. So for instance, Marks and Spencer's, which is in walkable distance to us, I absolutely, of all the supermarkets out there, I trust them the most. They have responsibly sourced produce, ethically sourced produce, organic farming, which have to be certified by the authorities to be like that. I do eat eggs. The eggs and farms are inspected by the RSPCA to ensure that the chickens are very well looked after, they live wild and free, truly, truly well looked after and happy and not forced to overproduce. So I'm ethically okay with eating eggs from a place like that. So if I then go to M&S on a day such as Tuesday or Sunday in our area, which is the day that a lot of the things are reduced, I'm happy to do that and buy it very, very, very reduced without quite dumpster diving. And I think that that is a nice balance there and still gives me some choice over what I have, and I know where it's come from, and that it is an ethical supermarket, that it is organic and reasonably healthy produce, and that I'm also, you know, being frugal with my money. And because my partner isn't as picky as me about what he eats, not that I am picky, but I like to eat perhaps a little bit more healthy than he is, for instance, that bothered about, we can go and get a few different things, and it doesn't matter, as you probably saw from that clip. My partner is a very, very active, tall man, and he can eat much more than I can, so he needs filling up, and this is the way that we afford it and still be able to save and live a frugal lifestyle. Now, I know there are people like Robin Greenfield, I'm not sure which he prefers, that actually go the majority of their time, their year, actually trying to eat purely free, either, I think he did one series that was solely eating from the land, foraging, but also I think he did something at one point where it was dumpster diving as well, looking at all the produce that is thrown out at the end of the day. And he managed to eat for an insane amount of time without actually spending any money at all on food. Now, I am intrigued to do this, and one thing that really sparked some of my thoughts about this lifestyle is, I'm not sure, you know, with me being a little bit of a filmie, have any of you seen a movie called The East? And it is a little bit cult-like, but aside from the cult activities, one thing they also do is dumpster diving, getting things that they think would otherwise be wasted, and they live basically completely free by that means. It's actually quite an interesting film. It's not obviously solely about that, but that's something they do within the film. So to end this video, because I don't want to have the upload problems that I had yesterday, let's just finish by asking, I would be interested to know whether any of you guys watching have ever tried freeganism, and do you know of anybody else that lives a freegan lifestyle? Before I forget, let's do today's water challenge, which I'm obviously doing every day of these 31 days. And throughout the video that I've just been recording, if anybody has been wondering what they are my recycled rags for wiping the surfaces. More on that coming up. Let's do today's challenge. How fast was that? Hope you enjoyed today's topical discussion. It's obviously always just a discussion, no judgments on anybody's type of lifestyle, and thank you all for watching. Bye!